So if you've got a client that has really set interests or particular, I guess you might say, hyperfixations or obsessions, how can you utilize that in your therapy without making it I'm taking away something you're really interested in and using it in a more, I guess, functional manner?
Yeah, I think that can often happen in sessions. So we chat about that today?
Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the Integration Station. I'm your host, Michael, a child and adolescent occupational therapist, and with me today is Eleanor.
I'm also a child and adolescent occupational therapist.
Yes, looking forward to answering some of these questions, and got some questions that did come through, so people must have listened to the previous podcast, got the right URL and other things. And
added .au at the end of the podcast email, you know.
Correct, all those things. So if you do have any questions, please send them through to podcast@otfcgroup.au. That's our email. Otherwise, OTFC Group's on Instagram, and OTFC Group is also on TikTok. So they are the OTFC Group handles, I think, for both of those. And a bit of PD in your pocket.
Try to find the fun in learning how to support the young people in our lives.
We do. And some of that fun involves thinking and talking about activities of the week.
It does indeed, with our regular segments.
Yes, yeah. And that was one of our regular segments. We got some fantastic feedback about last week's Wheel of Names, and we thought we'd do that again.
Sounds good. I'm here for it.
Let's do it.
And was that feedback, once again, a conversation with yourself in the mirror, or did...
No, I didn't even speak to myself.
Therapy, activity of the week.
So last week, what we did was we had a Wheel of Names, different activities. Different pieces of equipment. And then the other wheel was performance components, so balance, strength, all those things, the sensory motor components that we look at in therapy, combining them and then seeing what activity comes up.
Putting us on the spot, but in a fun way.
What do you want to do first? Equipment or performance? Equipment first. So we're spinning the wheel. Here we go. What do we got? Trapeze. And performance component is... So the trapeze is the triangular sort of...
Holding on with the hands.
Bar that you hold on to with postural control trapeze.
Love it.
Okay. Man, this is it's almost one that there's too many options here.
I know.
First thing that I think of when I think of postural control and trapeze.
Yep.
I think we've talked about it before, maybe. Log of fire.
Oh, that is such a good one. Yes.
Like that one?
I do like that one. Quick refresher for those who might not have listened to that episode.
Sure. So essentially the trapeze, if you have 3 suspension points, which is fundamental, you need 3 suspension points here.
Yep.
One is the central suspension point where the trapeze is connected.
Yes.
And there is the 2 outer suspension points which have a log swing attached to it.
Yep.
So what you do is you raise that log swing, I don't know, let's say 10, 15 centimetres off the ground, something like that. So it's just got enough clearance. And then you have a trapeze at the sort of like stretched out arm height. So your arms are...
Yeah, when you're at the very... So essentially, when you're standing back at the maximum point that the trapeze can extend to...
Yep.
That you've got your arms outstretched.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and you can adjust it. Essentially, the aim of the activity is that the person is going to hold the trapeze and lift their legs up as the swing comes underneath. So it's like this pendulum, and the person keeps jumping up over the log of fire.
Yeah.
As it's swinging. The postural control component is, there's an upper limb strength component holding on, but the postural control component comes in with the ability to maintain that position, maintain that posture as the log is moving backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And what I do like to do on that is turn it from a log of fire into a surfing activity where they stand on the log swing, and then it's a really intense postural control activity.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you've conquered the log of fire, then you can stand on it and hold yourself on the trapeze. It's like windsurfing, really.
Yes.
That's what it is.
It's like
so you're holding on and your feet are on the board and it's going backwards
Yep.
and forwards, obviously with safe landing spaces, crash mats around you in case you do fall into a big wave. But you're holding on, and that the amount of force that takes to pull yourself up when that log swing is shooting forward, and that inertia is going one direction and the body's going backwards and you're trying to pull yourself up. There's a lot of work being done by the body there to maintain that what we call that equilibrium.
Yep.
That stability. So log of fire, certainly one to work on postural control, but also that surfing activity.
Yeah, for sure. I think I mentioned when I had done this in in a session a little while back, I often like to make it a little bit of a challenge where it might be me versus my friend that I'm doing the activity with, and we do a few different rounds where the log is stationary initially when you're jumping backwards and forwards, tucking the legs, then the second round is moving,
Yes.
and then you count how many in a row you can do before the log of fire hits you.
Yeah.
And then for the balance component, when it's the windsurfing, like you said, we will go, you get a point for every certain number of seconds you can hold on without your feet falling off. And we do like to, just to increase that challenge further, have the wind going through the surfboard by having someone shaking the log swing on the side and see if you can still hold on.
Do you ever have flying fish coming past?
No, but that is an excellent addition, and I think I'll be bringing that in from now on.
The flying fish in the water when you're trying to windsurf and there are seagulls and flying fish trying to hit you and trying to avoid them as you come past.
Yeah, I think beanbags and softballs in the therapy space would lend itself very well for that thing.
Yes, absolutely. Great.
How good. Do you know what? The one that immediately came to mind for me is another classic that we have in sessions, which is the electric gap.
Oh, yep.
Which is essentially you would have two wedges positioned at a smaller distance initially, and then you've got your trapeze at the center point. So the idea is you're standing on one wedge, using the trapeze to do like a Tarzan swing across the gap to land on the other side. If you have the wedges positioned so that the tail end is going outwards, it also means when you land, you can slide down and crash on a crash mat on the other side, which is fun.
So good.
And then the way that I normally play is if you can get across 2 times at that level, we extend the gap. And so then you make that gap bigger and bigger. And similar aspects that you're working on with the log of fire, but with this, I guess the whole point with the postural control is that every time you have to tuck your legs to swing across, you're having to maintain that core control and stability as you're moving across the gap. It's basically like doing a crunch and trying to sustain that as you're moving over to the other side. And for my kids who are really capable, I'll often extend that by having multiple trapezes in between the gap. That is my favorite. But man, that is hard work, and there is so much planning, and the timing has to be exact to get all the way across. It's really good fun. And that's the kind of activity, probably the same with the log of fire, that I feel like you've got, 2 pieces of equipment there really, with 3 pieces with 2 wedges, but you could spend a whole session doing that, and all you're doing is just shifting the components to grade and set that just right challenge, but otherwise the elements stay the same.
I think you're right. There's the multiple trapezes add so much more to it, but you can start off with a very basic, whether it's a log of fire, whether it's electric gap, and then continue to grade up to increase the complexity, but not lose sight of the fact that we're still working on performance components. And I think we always talk about trying to, if someone has a particular goal, might be postural control or upper limb strength or just endurance or even motor planning. If someone has a particular goal, having a very specific or explicit task or activity allows you to see those skills and actions better than, say, at our obstacle course or a whole playground task.
Yeah,
so what we're trying to do here is go, here's a very specific task to target these particular areas, which allow me to see whether this is something that's successful or something that might need more support.
Yeah.
And then we can grade appropriately.
Yeah, I think you're so right there. I'll never forget a friend of mine that I'd worked with previously, very strong, and so could essentially, if you set up an obstacle course, he could make his way from one point to the other and have no issues getting his way through that. Was it with the fluidity and, the control that perhaps you might be expecting? But the second you put him prone in a swing, he really struggled to maintain that position because that core control, particularly in an endurance-based task, is really hard. Just his, general upper and lower limb strengths just supported in lots of other activities.
Let's go to our regulation strategy of the week.
Sounds good.
Regulation strategy of the week.
So I think today we've kind of incidentally brought in our own regulation strategies. We're in a new space, we're adjusting to a new environment, and we have brought some things in to help us so that we feel regulated and organised to do the tasks that we need to with the podcast.
Correct.
What have you brought in, Michael?
Well, today I've brought in my
OTFC branded.
Yeah, OTFC branded stress ball, little squishy one, but it's a really old one. It's got the old puzzle logo.
Retro.
Those who can see it, yeah, bit of a throwback. Throwback Tuesdays. Hang on, it's Thursday. Throwback Thursdays. Is that still a thing?
I don't know.
Remember how that was a
I'm
thing
not
on
up to date
social media?
enough. Yeah.
Throwback Thursdays. Anyway.
We can bring it back with retro-themed stress balls.
Yeah, retro-themed stress balls. Anyway, I actually, I was looking for something else in the storeroom yesterday, came across one of these, and I was like, oh, this is great. Just just so tangible and so transferable, just having that stress ball. But I also
You've been using that ever since. So you picked it up yesterday and you've had it with you the whole time.
Yeah, I brought it home and everything. I just like it. It's so versatile. I did. I can roll around. I was just moving around yesterday, just pretending to bowl like a cricket ball. And because it's soft, it like just bounces and it doesn't damage anything. Just throwing up and catching.
So many things you can do.
Very regulating. So and I've just got it at the moment between my legs here under the chair. So it's hidden, but it's also providing pressure to my legs.
Yeah.
So so many
options.
Great transferable little tool. This used to be such a massive thing, stress balls. Remember it was like under stress, get a stress ball, squeeze the stress ball.
Yes.
Now there are so many other fidget or regulatory toys. But I'm like, the good old fashioned stress ball has a purpose. And
you're going back to it. Bringing it back.
Yep.
Trendsetter.
Throwback Thursdays.
I have a few more like everyday items in my lap currently. Sure. I think I might have mentioned before, but this is my key tag, that access card for work. And I often have this in my hands, just twirling it around. It's like a, what do you call like the fidget spinners that were like that? It's literally
like that.
the exact same. But I feel like it's a, an age appropriate option. That's very, when I'm in the workplace, it's quite discreet. And you'll probably often see me, I guess when I'm chatting, I'll have it in my hand and I'm just moving it around. I often see people with their
lip balms
and things like that, which is the exact same purpose. But I find myself actually when I'm giving, in conversations where I might be doing like public speaking or something like that, also with my hands, I feel like I talk a lot with my hands, but then I often I'll hold them in front of me, which I think is the exact same thing. I'm like squeezing my hands. It's the sort of using my own body to provide that regulation opportunity as well. So I think I certainly just am someone that really gravitates towards that and responds to that. So it's good to have different items to help.
One thing, when you mention hands and using your hands, one thing that I find can be a less desirable regulation strategy, but sometimes I catch myself doing it, is picking the skin around my nails.
Oh, yeah.
And so I know that when I'm doing that, either I'm feeling a little bit anxious or a bit overwhelmed, or I'm just a bit antsy and just need to move.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have something for my hands, then I will notice myself doing that more.
That's what you'll go to, yeah.
So, because I know for a lot of people out there, they have, they might go, I bite my nails, or I pick the skin around my nails and go, I don't want to do that. And just to reassure people or to validate that that's probably a reflection of maybe how your body's telling you how you're feeling, and you're trying to self-regulate.
Absolutely.
Which is fine, but obviously you don't want to keep doing that. So finding other avenues, and that's why I said, having like a stress ball or a squishy or something for your hands certainly helps me.
And how automatic can that be as well, without even realizing you find yourself picking or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes a habit.
It does. Well, you don't really have to give too much conscious thought to access that. So it's just about creating other pathways and strengthening that over time too. And
it's just that sort of that repetitive action, repetitive things that can happen. Speaking of repetitive, we've got a question that came in that was about repetitive hiding and retrieving of toys.
I think this was something that we had seen, rather than a question that came in directly to us, but something that we had seen on a forum online. Yeah,
correct. Yes, that's a fair point. I should clarify that we did see that and thought we might answer it.
Might be helpful for our listeners.
Absolutely. So it was I wonder if the question I should say is, I wonder if any of you have any experience or knowledge regarding the repetitive hiding and retrieving of toys. So the question was, for context, the person has a child who's ASD level 3, struggles during sessions because of a hyperfixation with letters and numbers. What the child does is, with the letters, is they hide the letters and numbers behind and under the kitchen set, and then pushes the kitchen set over to get the letters and numbers, and would just keep doing that over and over again. The person goes on to say that they don't show an interest in trying to, when the therapist tries to place letters and numbers on ladders, so extension of play is harder. So they were just asking if there are any suggestions or ideas They said, could it be a visual seeking behaviour? What can we do about it?
Yeah. And I think, I guess this is a very specific circumstance, but I guess extends itself a little bit as well that, that's not uncommon that you might see those preferred or repetitive play patterns in a session, and it's just working out, well, how can I come into this young person's play? How could I use that in another sense to motivate them in the session and try and extend what that looks like.
And I guess when we're looking at, say, this example, I mean, again, we don't know the young person she's referring to, but ASD level 3 may suggest that there is a potentially intellectual disability there or maybe some cognitive challenges. That would mean that generating play ideas or coming up with more complex play would be a lot harder. And so the preference would be to engage in a play that is most comfortable for them or suited for them. And I know we talked a little bit about when, say, someone is constantly engaging in maybe repetitive actions or pushing things or switching lights on and off or rolling something and knocking it over and then doing it again, that repetitive play can be quite regulating.
Yeah, very true.
And it can be quite consistent and that consistency can just help that person. But it's also a reflection that play ideas can be much harder to generate. And so they prefer to go and stay with the ones that they know because they need guidance to
totally
add ideas and increase complexity.
And I think, thinking about, really specifically the DSM-5 criteria when they're considering an autistic diagnosis, that, considerations around restricted and repetitive patterns of behaviour and play can certainly be something that contributes to that understanding. So you're absolutely right. And I also appreciate that even without that, that could just be something that falls under that bucket for that young person. That's something that's how they access and explore the world around them. And that's something that sits as a preference for them.
So that's a good point about the DSM-5, because obviously in there, that's a very medical model to go play and repetitive behaviours are, I guess, non-desirable, or they're hallmarks of maybe someone that is unable to extend their play beyond what would be expected for an age level, which I can understand. But then from, that neuroaffirming sociological model, you'd say, well, this person's play, that's their play and that's what they enjoy doing.
I completely agree with that. And it's just how they explore their world, and it's how they, that's what that intrinsic motivation looks like, to use what's available for them in their environment. And that's what makes sense for them, feels comfortable for them, is regulating for them. And yes, just want to be very clear within that.
Absolutely.
That too, that just in understanding the why of what we're maybe seeing here, but making sure that we're being, having that really neuroaffirming approach, like you said. Yeah.
And I know we've talked about in previous episodes, I know we even talked about, what role does the DSM-5 have moving forward? And, is it something that will be adjusted over time as we move more into a neuroaffirming wave, which is completely understandable. But yeah, as you said, in terms of that play, if that is a preferred play, then okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
And that's where we can go. That's our baseline. That's our preferred method.
Yep.
How could we extend that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I know in the question it was mentioned whether this might be a visual seeking behavior. I think we were discussing that we can see an element of a cause and effect play here. I hide the toys, I push the item over, and then the toys are revealed. There's certainly an element there. And if that's something that they're seeking, I think that was maybe where my first thought went to, that if that's something that they like to do, can we maybe make that on a bigger scale, that rather than hiding it under a kitchen set, they're putting it under things like, if you've got access to it, maybe it's something like pillows or blankets or soft tunnels, foam equipment, that kind of thing. So they're getting the same cause and effect using items that they enjoy using and they gravitate towards, but there you're extending that and incorporating perhaps some bigger movements, some more heavy work opportunities, and seeing how that can facilitate that engagement from there.
Yeah, I think any way to, as we said at the top of the episode, any way to incorporate something that is motivating, and obviously in this case, letters and numbers, and any way to incorporate more sensory motor components to extend the regulation supports that come from that. And then in doing so, making it more the play more complex or adding in more ideas will combine the approach to go, I'm using your idea that you have, so I've followed your lead here, you want to use those, I'm not taking those away. I'm adding in something that's regulating, pushing big heavy work stuff, and then also maybe I'm adding in that we're hiding them elsewhere, or to get to the kitchen you have to climb over something, and adding in components and steps and sequences. And in that way you are extending the play. You're increasing that child's capacity to expand and extend the play.
And it's very much that expose retreat, isn't
Yes.
it? When you're offering them something new, they have the opportunity to engage with that, and then you're moving away once you've set that up to see how they move through it, how do they respond to it, is it something that they enjoy and want more of, is it something that actually, because it sits outside of the realm of what they're looking to play with, that can then become distressing. That's something that I suppose as we were reading out that question where it's placed on a ladder and they just don't show any interest there, is that actually a level of avoidance because maybe in that manner it feels tricky, or potentially it sits beyond where they pair how they're wanting to use it with, and so the interest isn't there because they don't see it in the same way. They don't see it as an extension, and they don't have that motivation to engage because it's just not how they're wanting to use that.
And even taking on ideas, when you have a particular way of doing something and someone says, do it this way. Just the anxiety that comes from, but hang on, I do it in this way, you're telling me to do it in another way. That's a whole lot of new information. That's a whole new motor plan I have to come up with. And even think of as adults, when someone says, oh, the way you're, completing that report is let's do it this way instead. People freeze and go, oh, but I'm so used to doing it this way. Like, I don't know how to change. Children are much better at adapting and changing than adults are. But even in this context, I think it's really important to understand if a child is finding it hard to extend their play, there are a number of reasons. But I think a big one, particularly for a child with ASD level 3, would be this: they're anxious about trying something different.
Absolutely.
And they don't trust their body or know exactly how to do that. And so it does very much become an exposed retreat. It does very much become a repetitive ways of introducing something to a new way of doing it. Means that they develop the confidence and it becomes more predictable. And I think
you want to affirm as well that just because they're doing something a little bit differently to how you might anticipate it should be used doesn't mean that they're doing something incorrectly. Obviously, we always want to maintain safety. That's always the boundary that we want to enforce. But if that's the way that makes sense for them, how can we, I guess that's a lot of what we're saying, how can we really lean into that with them, be a play partner, see what that activity is affording for them and seeing then how you can extend it while still meeting those same needs. And I will say too, I guess this reminds me of a little person that I just absolutely love working with, and he's a super switched on little boy, non-speaking, actually has a lot of great physical capabilities, but there are certain things that he'll gravitate towards, and he loves this puzzle set. And how he prefers to play with that is he'll tap the puzzle pieces one by one in his teeth, put them back, and I guess you could very easily look at that and go, well, no, we don't want to put those things in our mouth. But that's just how he's responding to his environment. And I think there's a few elements there for him in terms of the sound, the touch input, that he's getting feedback in that. And I actually just, when he initially started doing that, I just focused on being in the space with him. He wasn't showing much interest in me initially, but then over time he would let me pass the puzzle pieces to him. And actually sometimes I wouldn't tap them on my teeth, but I would hold them up and tap on the back of them. So I was still making the same noise, and I'm showing him I'm not trying to change your play. I'm coming in here to be a partner in this with you. And then actually where that's moved towards is the exposed retreat for other activities might look like setting something up, showing what it might look like, demonstrating it myself and moving away. And the puzzle pieces then actually became a familiar activity that he would regulate against after coming over and trying what I was doing. So when I think about this activity too, I guess, is there an opportunity for us to show this little person other things they can be doing, modeling exposed retreat using yourself, but not necessarily looking to change what they're doing there and letting them move through that to regulate, but perhaps that will then help them make the choice to come and do something else that you're suggesting. So just considerations, I think, in how you're using that. If that's if that's where their comfort zone sits and that's what your sessions look like, how can you lean into it with them? But then if you are looking to extend to other things, use that as a base for them to regulate against.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because I think what I'm hearing there is you have provided a safe space for this person to engage, and you haven't gone, your idea is not a complex idea. That's your way of interacting, whether it's putting to your teeth, smelling, whatever it is. There's a multi-sensory factor there that works for you. And I am mirroring that, I'm modeling that to some extent, to go like, I also like your idea. Let's share this together. It's both our play, and that builds so much connection, and lovely to hear that that's worked.
Yeah, it was very cool. The first time that they came and did the flying fox, so we just worked on that for, it started off with he'd come over and he might put his hands on, then he'd back right away. But then over time, it just reached that point that I felt like we had enough trust and could just help him move through, and just very, very cool. But need him to have time to do things his way. And I think he was a little person that was so used to, I can imagine people coming into his space to try and direct him elsewhere. And so he just really sought that control, because he has the right to that autonomy, and so just wanting to show him that it could maybe look a bit different.
And I think so often we hear from the lived experience of families and young people who are able to articulate their experiences of maybe it's therapies or school or anything, is that in their own time, like everybody has their own time that they pick up things or they engage in things, or, just because someone may find it harder to engage in a way that you would expect them to engage, or it might be that, they're having difficulties toileting independently, doesn't mean that that's impossible.
No.
It might just mean that in their time, when they're ready and when they're feeling like they can, with the right support, that they could do that.
Yeah. I think for this person too, if they were, trying to take some of those things on board and showing other ways of playing, maybe it might look like that they're not interested and they're not watching, but they're probably taking in so much more than you even realize. And then maybe what it looks like is, this session I watched them. As they watched me, they were more observant, and actually they came over at one point and they entered the space and then they backed away again. And you just watch those little things that maybe don't seem like too much, but knowing that you're chipping away towards something that looks a little bit different for them and exposing them to something new that they end up really enjoying. And then bit by bit, you're expanding what those preferred or enjoyed items look like, and building that out. But that motivation's coming from them. It's not that you're forcing that on them or trying to guide them to an activity when they're not ready for it. You're showing them in a way that feels safe for them to participate. Yeah.
And the other thing I'd say on this is this could be the person's second session with that child.
Absolutely.
And
that's so true.
time can make a big difference, and the amount of time that you spend with someone and they get to know you get to know them, you develop that relationship, that rapport. You can certainly start implementing ideas. As I said, I'm not going to take on someone's idea of someone I don't know and don't trust straight away.
Oh, so true.
Is that some pyramid scheme you're trying to sell me here, So absolutely.
Yeah, no, I've got a good thing going on here. I'm good with that, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think you're so right. And they could be 1, 2, 3 sessions in, and that's what it's looking like. But does that maybe even suggest that person's still building those feelings of safety in that new space with a new person, with items that make sense to them, and they'll explore. If we can set this up in a way that they feel safe to explore, they might be able to do that. But you have to go at their pace when they're ready, and be really gentle in how you pitch that.
Okay, got one more question, which is, how do you explain what an OT does to someone who isn't familiar?
Well, you did a great podcast about this a little while back, right? Occupational Therapy 101.
When you weren't here, I did a 101.
And I think you explored that in such great detail. I know for me, the thing that I go to the most is an OT might get involved when there is something happening in someone's life that stops them from doing the things that they need to do, or do it in the way that they want to do things. And a lot of people might think about rehab or return to work. Perhaps they've had an injury in the workplace and they're needing someone to help them return to those duties. There's obviously OTs that work in a hospital space or mental health, aged care.
Yeah,
so the reason that the approach is so broad is because, I guess, with that foundational understanding, there are so many different areas that could be applicable. And for young people, the things that they need to do in their day is build their independence in routines, connect with other people, socialize, engage at school or in other occupations. That's where our job comes in as OTs, to support them in doing the things they need to do and as the best version of themselves.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have too much more to add there. I think that's a good answer. But yes, you're right. There was an episode on that, and have a listen, and hopefully it gives you some more insight into what an OT does. But
you do that in such great detail on that podcast.
Thank you.
From the other week. So
well, unbiasedly, I think OTs are great. So how do you explain what an OT does? Just say they do great things.
They do great things.
All right, might leave it there for this week. Thank you again, Eleanor. Thanks for all the questions from the listeners. And
there was one more that came through that we didn't quite get to around ADHD and impulsivity. So we'll make sure that we tackle that one next time.
Check it out next time, and other ones that come through as well. Podcast otfcgroup.au is our email. Otherwise, Instagram and TikTok, OTFC Group.
Yeah, lots of ways you can get to us.
Otherwise, call us up. Got a question?
You're taking phone calls now.
I can take phone calls if you want.
Michael's got a dedicated line. Call anytime.
1300 OTFC.
Brilliant.
It's not actually the number, so don't call it. You're not going to get anything. But certainly, anybody that has questions, please send them through. We'll do our best to answer them and go from there.
Sounds good.
Shout out to
Fletch. Got some activity ideas I might try with you next time, my friend.
Oh, great. Excellent. We'll look forward to hearing about it, and maybe that could be your activity of the week for next time.
Absolutely. We'll see what the wheel spins if it allows that to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.